Morning all, and welcome to this bite size in our Checking for Understanding series, where we'll be looking at how we can go around and gather responses during circulation. So just to act as a reminder, so far in this series then we've looked at how we specify success and plan for feedback, how we gather responses during instruction. Today, obviously, therefore, then is about how we gather responses during circulation, and then we will finish off our final bite size in this series will be around how we use accountable questioning. So, as with any element of checking for understanding, it's important that we have some prior preparation. The more prepared we are to go in and check for understanding, the more aware we are of the specific things that we're looking for, the more quality our interactions with students can be, but also the higher quality we can have when we follow up after checking for understanding. So when we're thinking about checking during circulation, we're thinking about actually tracking students and how do we start to track their responses, whether those be verbal responses or written responses. So one of the things that we can start to try is to design a sheet to track those responses. And usually what we would be looking at, the best option would just be to simply use a worksheet that the students will be using in the lessons anyway. So it kind of saves us any additional level of work. And that worksheet, therefore, then can be used to track the students' answers as we circulate around and then plan the responses that we are going to give. So within our tracker, it's important that we have something available to us where we have some exemplar material. So we're going to include some exemplar material on our tracker because that will allow us to kind of highlight the different features, the different misconceptions that we're actually going to be looking for. So before we go out and before we circulate around the room, we have to have decisions made with regards to what is it that we're actually looking for, what is it that we're actually expecting to find, but then what could some of those errors be as and when we're going out and around the room. So an important part of this tracker and any exemplar that we put together is that we list those likely errors. So we include those likely misconceptions, we include those errors that we're going to look out for when we circulate. This will enable us to be in a position where we can give much more accurate and much more efficient feedback as well. With this then, it's quite important that we standardize the work layout that all students are going to use. So if we insist on all of our students laying out their work in the same way, it makes it a little bit more efficient and a bit easier for us to assess where they're up to in terms of the work that they're producing, but also how they're getting on with that work with a quick glance. So when we're actually in our lessons, when we're getting ready then to circulate around the room, we need to make sure of a couple of things just before we actually begin that circulating to check for understanding. First and foremost, then we need to plan a specific route. So plan that route that we're going to take around the room, because that'll make sure that either we can cover every student or we can target those who need the most support first. We can also be in a position where we can target specific groups of children. So it might be that we want to visit all of the boys first, or we want to visit our SEND learners first. It just allows us then to gather really useful data on all of the student learning, and therefore then allows us to target as many students as possible within that circulating phase. We also need to make sure that we're going to prime the students before circulating. So if we make them aware that we are about to circulate, we can also be in a position that they have that ability to then think, sir or mum is about to come round. It might be that I'm about to be asked a question over what I've done, or my work's going to be looked at, so I better get on and do some. But by priming them, it gives them an opportunity to be ready for any follow-up that we then offer their way. And then finally, we let them know what we're actually going to be looking for. So students are aware, of when we're coming round, when we prime them, but we also make them aware of what we will be looking for. So making sure that they are aware of what is the specific thing that we are looking for when we come round to look at their work, or when we come round to have that learning conversation with them. So the final part of this then is the circulating itself. So as we're going around the classroom, we need to be thinking about how we're going to actually record student error. So we're going to list and tally maybe student answers, and then look at what are those common errors. This will help us then prioritize the questions that we're going to ask during the next whole class feedback. So the kind of like the follow-up to any checking for understanding is that, well, what next? What decisions are we making? How are we therefore then adapting our approach based on the information that we've gleaned from the students in the room? So by understanding what those common errors, what those common misconceptions might be, we're then in a better position to be able to plan the questions or the instructions that we might give during whole class feedback. It might be that there are only kind of pockets of students that show those misconceptions, so we might group those students so we can work with them on a smaller basis, or it might be that there are just the odd one or two that we can therefore then have those one-to-one conversations with. The other side of it then is to make sure that we identify and we analyze exemplary work. So as we circulate, making sure that we note down any high quality student responses that we're then in a position to share with the class. As we're doing that, it will also therefore then be important that we analyze which parts are particularly worth sharing. So what are the particularly strong elements of any piece of exemplar work, so that we can highlight to all of the students, so we can therefore then start to really make the processes explicit that those successful students are going through. Anyway, as ever, hope this has been helpful, and if you do have any questions about any of the content, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks a lot.